Are you here? It's the Paul Leslie Hour, episode number 1102, and we are delighted to welcome back the hilarious and insightful Mark Melkoff, who is here to share stories from his new book, Love, Johnny Carson. Join Mark and Paul for a lively conversation about the ultimate late-night legend, the enduring magic of The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, and the many entertainment icons that made up Johnny Carson's world. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, here's Paulie.
Welcome to Mark Melkoff Returns here on the Paul Leslie Hour, and I am very excited to talk to Mark yet again. Now, the last time we couldn't see each other, but
That's right.
we are now in this era where everybody sees each other all the time. And first of all, I want to congratulate you on your new book. It's entitled Love, Johnny Carson, One Obsessive Fan's Journey to Find the Genius Behind the Legend.
That's right.
So, Mark,
Yes,
thanks
sir.
for coming back.
Yeah, it's great. It's been a while. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I went back and listened to the last time we were on, and immediately I felt completely relaxed because you have this communication style, and I think it's as a result of you have interviewed so many people.
As you have, yeah, we've been fortunate to get some good people, right?
That's a good word for it, fortunate. But also probably from watching so much late night television, which both you and I have done, we've developed a sense of pacing, I think.
Yeah, no, I think so for sure.
Yeah.
That's. I agree.
So I feel relaxed.
Oh, well, right back at you. Thank you.
So do you think that you, as a result of the many, many episodes of the Carson podcast, which is one of the greatest podcasts of all time,
Wow.
and as a result of writing this book, do you feel that you've gotten any closer to discovering the genius of Johnny Carson?
I think so. I mean, it's hard to really define exactly what it is. I think it's a bunch of different things, but I think from talking to his friends and the people that knew him that had never talked before, I think the genius really is, and this goes against the media who made him out to be cold and aloof, and he was not that guy behind the desk. The people closest to him consistently said he was almost the same person on and off camera, which I just don't think you can fool the American public for 30 years and not be yourself there. And that went against everything I thought. I think the genius is that, it was a small group of people that he trusted, that he was friends with for years, that he could be himself like that. But I think the genius was that he was himself. He was Nebraska. He expected excellence of himself and from everybody. And he put everything into his career, his social life with his wives and the kids suffered for sure. But just a student of comedy. I mean, in 1971, he had 4 TVs going on in his apartment in New York City, and he was watching at 11:30 his own show, The Competition, Dick Cavett, David Frost, neither Joey Bishop or Merv Griffin. So in terms of competition, being competitive, being driven as part of his genius, and just being a student of comedy, Jack Benny, and since he was 14 performing. So there's a lot of things that I think that go into the genius. He was very witty, really funny, but I just think part of the genius is knowing his audience, really listening and being curious, I think are 2 other things with him. And he knew his strengths and he played to them, I think.
Very, very well put.
Try. That's a hard question, but yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, sometimes I ask the hardest question first so that,
Okay.
you just know that it's smooth sailing from here. It's like, okay,
All right.
you've got all the
No, it's
answers
all
from
good.
here.
That was fun.
Well, as I said, you've interviewed, so many different people, and I just want to read a list of some people. I selected these just because there's a great diversity of, okay, so here's some of the people that Mark Melkoff has interviewed about Carson. Mel Brooks, Dick Cavett, Tina Sinatra, Elizabeth Ashley, Larry King, Carol Burnett, Chevy Chase, Jay Leno, Tim Reed. I mean, holy smokes, I could keep on going. You know, I've done certain interviews where I feel like this certain person revealed the most about another person, because people tend to be more informative about other people than they are like a person themselves. You know what I mean? Like, you could get more information about certain people about Johnny Carson than you probably could if you got a chance to talk to Johnny Carson himself.
You might be right about that. That's interesting. Yeah, you're probably right.
Who has been that person?
Yeah.
Who has been the gold standard in terms of finding out about Carson himself?
Sure. Of the people that I talked to, I think the people that really informed who he was that I talked to, I'd say his friend Howard Smith, who was good friends for years with Carson in Malibu. People like David Steinberg, who was friends with Carson, and Chevy Chase that played in the poker game with him, like Barry Diller, that really, you know, for years just knew him as just their friend and really funny. And again, they said the same thing. He was almost the same guy on and off camera. Danny Robinson, whose parents, Bud and Cece Robinson, opened up for Johnny and he was friends with Johnny up until he passed away. People like that, I think, to get the inside story of who Carson was. That inner circle. It was a small inner circle. And obviously Carson, not obviously, but Carson demanded loyalty and he gave loyalty. And they basically said, if you were his friend, he would do anything for you.
Now, when we spoke last time, you were just about to hit 200 episodes of the Carson podcast. And I kept kind of poking about Doc Severinsen.
Sure.
I was telling you, it's got to happen. It's got to happen. And then it did.
It did. I was very happy to get Doc. That was huge. We got him twice.
Yeah. Huge score.
Absolutely.
What was your impression of the great Doc Severinsen?
My impression is that he misses Johnny to this day, thinks about him every day, and just was, you know, they were friends, but at the same time, just really wanted to be excellent like Johnny was. Johnny demanded a lot of himself, and Doc, I wish it's certain performers have a really hard time enjoying the process, and Doc was just always walking on eggshells, just really kind of nervous that he might let Johnny down. So there was always this anxiety, but that he wanted to please Johnny. But they were magic in terms of the chemistry back and forth when Doc would fill in for Ed McMahon, and Doc just really read Johnny well. Like, for example, Johnny hated to be corrected, even if he was wrong. So, you know, it comes back from a commercial and Johnny's like, Doc, that song that you just played, that was great. That gives the wrong title. And Doc doesn't correct him. Doc wisely says, yes, that's what I just played. And yes, I appreciate that you like him. So Doc knew how to handle Johnny, and, you know, they were friends. They vacationed together, and the whole dressing flashy was just a complete accident. And Johnny just very wisely was like, you're going to do this every night. And Doc played the part very, very well. But I mean, talk about being driven with Doc. Even on his honeymoon, he was practicing the trumpet every day. His wife, Emily Marshall, was telling me. I mean, the guy, in terms of his discipline and his work ethic, was unbelievable.
Did you ever see Doc in concert?
I never did. I really did. I wish I could have seen him. It never worked out. I've talked to him on the phone subsequently a bunch of times, but I've never seen him play. It's amazing. He retired like a year ago from touring. I'm sure he still practices here and there. I haven't talked to him in a while. But what a life. What a career.
Absolutely. He's great live, by the way. Now,
I bet.
You have gotten some amazing scores, including people that, like, you know, in the Sinatra world, Tina Sinatra is kind of known for being like the one that's hard to get.
Wow.
And, you know, there were some iconic Frank Sinatra moments on the Carson show.
Exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit about her and that aspect of Johnny Carson?
I think the reason Miss Sinatra agreed to talk to me probably is because it was Johnny Carson, and Carson was such a special person to Frank Sinatra and vice versa. Carson worshiped Sinatra, would sing Sinatra in the office, play Sinatra. one of his assistants in New York said the soundtrack to Johnny in the 60s in New York was Sinatra because it was always playing. They really got to know each other in St. Louis when Johnny filled in emceeing with the Rat Pack. And then they flew back to New York together. And I think they either went to Jilly's or Patsy's, one of the two. And at Patsy's, Sinatra and Carson had their own side exit so they could kind of sneak in and out without the public. And yeah, they really were wonderful together. They enjoyed each other's company. Johnny, I think, was always in awe. And then Johnny would talk about on The Tonight Show, he struggled with drinking. He was not a good drinker. He'd have one drink too many and he would turn into Attila the Hun. He would say, people, when they drink, sometimes get fun-loving. Johnny said he would go the opposite and want to fight everybody. So Sinatra intervened on an occasion in 1971 and saved Johnny's life. And Johnny always was in debt to Sinatra. So when Sinatra asked Johnny to do the Reagan inaugural, to host it, Johnny said yes because it was Sinatra and Sinatra saved his life. Johnny at that point just didn't want to do anything political. It worked out very well. The inaugural was really fun in terms of Johnny and Rickles, I think, was on that year. Maybe it was a different year. Dangerfield maybe did something. But yeah, he revered Sinatra. And surprisingly so, Sinatra only appeared on Johnny's show with Johnny, to my knowledge, once scheduled. And then another time he made a cameo. I think that's when they were going to be doing the Reagan inaugural. He guest hosted, and Tina Sinatra told me her dad was so nervous. I mean, Johnny did make that look easy, and it's hard to think about Frank Sinatra being nervous. I just wouldn't think that. So cool and collected.
Yeah, you definitely don't think about that.
Yeah.
When I think about sometimes all-time great performances that I've seen from a musical standpoint, so many of them were from the Carson Show. I can recall seeing just Jimmy Buffett doing an incredible rendition of actually a Sinatra song, Stars Fell on Alabama, on Carson. Can you tell us a little bit about, from your experience as a Carson lover and as a person who interviewed so many of these people were musical, like before we talked about Paul Anka when you were on. Tell us about the musical contribution and the musical side of Johnny Carson himself.
Carson definitely like the big band jazz, but the Tonight Show is all about excellence. If somebody was excellent at what they did musically, they got booked. I mean, there were definitely the rock acts, the hard rock didn't really happen too much. It was a novelty. Like ZZ Top had never done live TV, and they had sold 30 million records. So Carson put them on as kind of a one-off. And then it was more about the beard, cut to Johnny with the ZZ Top beard and sunglasses. It was more about that. So, and Alice Cooper bringing on a snake, and that was pretty revolutionary for Alice Cooper to go on Carson. But for the most part, he liked the big band. He liked singers like Joe Williams. He loved Tony Bennett. He wishes that he had the talent of a Steve Lawrence that could sing. Steve Lawrence called Johnny a frustrated singer. He loved Buddy Rich drumming. Ed Shaughnessy, Johnny's drummer in the band, and Shaughnessy had a famous drum off together. But yeah, anybody that was talented, from opera to a Beverly Sills to Roy Clark, who Johnny had guest host a lot, and Willie Nelson. If somebody was talented, they'd go on the show. But people definitely, saw their careers as a boost from the music. I know Mac Davis told me he got his own variety show, and he just said Johnny did that for him. And then I have this in the book. Katie Lang, I think it was her second time on Carson. The producer saw her, and that's what got her her big break. And Carson loved Katie Lang, loved her music so much so that Katie Lang in an interview said, "I think Johnny Carson's in love with me." So if somebody was talented and they could go out there and they had a unique voice, like a Bette Midler, somebody that was that he would look at as a real original, he would champion them.
Now, the first place to broadcast my interviews was Jimmy Buffett's Radio Margaritaville, and you got him on the Carson podcast.
I did.
That was a great interview.
Thank you.
He commented how neat. He was like, "It's so cool that you're doing this, a Carson-themed show." Do you have any recollection of the late Jimmy Buffett in that interview?
I couldn't believe that he said yes. I reached out to somebody that works with him, and I emphasized that Mr. Buffett would want to do this because it was such a big part of his career, and I don't think he's ever talked about it. So I'm sure that a lot of those places get requests like that all the time to be a guest on things, but I was just like, this is something he's gonna want to do, and I emphasized it. And yeah, his one of his people told me Mr. Buffett's really excited to talk to you, and I'm like, why would he be excited to talk to me? And when I did speak to him finally, he's like, Mark, I'm excited because you're the first one that's ever asked me about going on Johnny Carson. It was the biggest break of my career. That and opening up for the Eagles. He couldn't really get booked on TV pre-Johnny Carson. And yeah, it was really great. Jimmy Buffett was the first guest on, did a Margaritaville, I believe, the first time, and sat down with Johnny on the couch. So yeah, I think he just got a kick out of the fact that he could tell his story for the first time with Carson and just really appreciated what Johnny did for him. But just really nice, gentle guy. I wish I could have done it in person. I was grateful that we got to do it. I tried to do as many as I could in person. Back then, I couldn't really record like this remotely. So I would a lot of times be in Los Angeles and New York at people's homes. People would invite me to their homes, their offices, so forth. Spending an hour, a little bit less with Jimmy Buffett was such a thrill.
Well done, Mark. Now, when I think about moments from Johnny Carson's show that really resonate with me, I seem to like the people that are kind of a little harder to classify. I don't know. I believe, Paul Williams was on your podcast.
He was.
Yeah. He's been a favorite of mine, and he's one of these guys. He's an actor, singer, songwriter, all these different things, recovery advocate, and a recurring guest, many, many appearances on Carson.
That's right. He was as funny as a stand-up comedian. He got huge laughs. He was naturally funny, naturally witty. He came up with the idea because he was filming Planet of the Apes to show up in the ape makeup and sang Johnny's favorite song, Here's That Rainy Day, and it was hilarious. He had a really great sense of humor. He was self-deprecating, which Johnny appreciated because Johnny was kind of the same way. But Paul Williams told me at one point, I watched the episode, it was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen. It was George Papard from the A-Team and Breakfast at Tiffany's, the actor. He was drunk. He had an alcohol problem. Eventually, George Papard was able to overcome, but he was drunk on the Tonight Show. And I was watching this, and he called Paul Williams a midget, and Paul Williams got up ready to fight George Papard. It was really got ugly. So yeah, I talked to Mr. Williams about it, and he kind of looking back was like, George had the same kind of disease with alcoholism and stuff at the time. So he has a little bit of empathy for that. But Paul Williams was such a rock star on that show on Carson. But just to hear those stories of him starting in New York on the show and just the sheer number of appearances. I mean, I forget what it is, but I'm guessing 50, 60 appearances. I'm guessing something like that.
Pretty incredible.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, I'm an accentuate the positive kind of guy, but there has to have been people that you just never could get to.
That's right.
Same here, but who would you say really, really, you're just like, man?
I think it's always good to ask because you never know. Because there were people that said yes that I was shocked that they did say yes. I mean, I really would have been great to talk to Dave Letterman, Bette Midler, Burt Reynolds would have been great. Rickles, Newhart would have been fun. In terms of the people that were public figures, those are probably the big ones. I was really happy to get Bob Uecker. He gave me an hour, and I know he very rarely was doing interviews. That was a treat. I think Steve Martin, maybe, because he was in the poker game. Those are just a few people looking back that I think I would have loved. Steve Lawrence as well. But for the most part, see, I started the Carson podcast because I wanted my questions answered. I had so many questions about what went on behind the scenes with Carson show, but behind the scenes. And I feel like I did get my questions answered, and that's what I set out to do. There were people that I really did wish talk to me and stuff, but in terms of like the main things I wanted to know, I did get those answered, so I'm happy about that.
So for somebody who is reading the book, Love Johnny Carson, your book, what is it that you ultimately want them to get out of that experience, aside from just, of course, the entertainment factor? Is there anything you want them to take away from it?
I think a few things. First of all, it's the most definitive book on Johnny's Tonight Show from 62 to 92. And just to realize the cultural significance of this man who for 30 years dominated American television and popular culture, and just the influence he had on just fashion and music, launching careers. And just, I wanted people to know, at least from his friend's point of view, who this guy was, because it was unlike a lot of the other Johnny Carson books and what the media said, cold and aloof. I wanted to tell the stories of the people I talked to, which was this completely different Johnny Carson. And I really wanted to set out on setting the record straight on certain things. Like, Carson never publicly talked about Joan Rivers, what actually happened. And for me, this was a chance to be like, this is why Johnny was upset. There's way more to the story. There were a lot of things like that where I felt this responsibility, this weight, just to get things right for the reader and maybe answer a lot of questions that people might have about famous bits on the show. Was this staged? Did Johnny know, or was this impromptu? So I just really wanted for people to know who Johnny was from the friends and the people that worked for him and his kindness. Now, I thought it was important also to show that his struggles. I mean, he talked on The Tonight Show about his alcohol issue, which I include in the book, him being overly competitive. He put all his energy in The Tonight Show. Something was going to suffer, and that was his marriages and his being a father, his kids. And I put that in as well. I just thought it was important just to show that this guy had a lot of great stuff going from philanthropy. I mean, $180 million he left. That foundation still pays out millions of dollars every year. It's unbelievable what he did. And behind the scenes, the kindness, the acts, we talk about that. But at the same time, he definitely had some bad habits. But I thought it was important to kind of show both. And this is kind of the first Carson book that I can really think of that really does show Carson, at least from his friends who were probably too loyal to talk when Carson was alive, on what Johnny really was like off camera.
Well, I want to remind everybody, Christmas is coming up. If you know that person who loves Johnny Carson, how could they not? You'll remember that the book is just called Love Johnny Carson by Mark Melkoff. And also, I want to plug real quick, you did a tremendous interview with the We Think It's Funny podcast. Sure. You did a great job there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, people should go check that out as well.
Yeah, Mark Schiff went on Carson a bunch of times. He was fun.
Isn't that a great show?
Yeah, I've known Danny for a long time. I had a day job on a show on Comedy Central, and Danny was an intern. So yeah, I've known him for a while. They get really good, solid guests. I was happy to talk to them for sure. And they both are Johnny Carson admirers. And the reason the book is called Johnny Carson is because so many people I talked to said I love Johnny Carson. So that to me is what the title means.
Well, I think that writing can be very self-informing. We learn things when we put pen to paper. And Mark, this might sound like a cheesy question, but did you learn anything about yourself as a result of writing this book?
I realized I learned the fact that I have a really tough time enjoying the process. It was a lot of panic where I'm not proud of the fact that I really maybe should have been a little bit level-headed. It was like one thing after another. How am I going to have enough time to pull this? The publisher was great, but there were just so many obstacles with this book that were tough. And I think I just want to, if I do another book, just try to figure out that maybe enjoying the process a little bit more. I just felt such a responsibility to the people that were going to be buying this book just to get the story right. There's no right or wrong answer about doing citations in a book, but I make some big claims. So it was important to me to do those citations. It was like 40 pages of citations, which was a lot of work. So yeah, it was definitely, if I have to do this over again, I just think I would try to enjoy the process more. And it was a huge victory that I didn't think I could do, was write a book. I mean, I did reach out to 6 very successful authors, 4 of which I didn't know, and I asked them if they would work with me on the book. And David Ritz, who I did not know, I just said, David, I've talked to almost 400 people at that point. I just want someone to talk me through the process and help me. And David was amazing. I mean, David did books one-on-one with Ray Charles, Don Rickles. I mean, he's on his 3rd book, I think, now with Willie Nelson. David helped really, because I got overwhelmed, and he was really amazing to kind of talk me through things. And he had done, I think, 65 books or something at that point. So having David there, and in certain sections, like the Joan Rivers section and some of the others, I mean, it was just, they were so long. David was really good on pulling back a little bit, and the details that I do my details, some of the stuff probably needed to go. So David was a really good barometer on what should stay and what didn't. So I was grateful for that. But I think maybe next time around, just trying to be level-headed and trust the process and maybe trust myself a little bit more.
Well, folks, check it out. Love Johnny Carson, One Obsessive Fan's Journey to Find the Genius Behind the Legend by our guest, Mark Melkov. I always like to leave the last word to the guest. Is there anything you would like to say to all the people who are tuned in?
I think if you ever had any questions on Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, or any curiosity on what went on behind the scenes, starting from Johnny's very first show, I talked to Mel Brooks. It was on Johnny's first show, October 1st, 1962, and what Johnny was like in retirement. And basically, it's about 30% of my podcast, 70% new stuff, maybe 60% new stuff. And if you ever had any curiosity on the show, or if you have somebody, I don't know, a grandfather, grandmother, mom, dad as well, it would make a great gift. But America for 30 years just loved Carson. They were heartbroken in May of 92 when Johnny signed off. And just the fact that today, 30 plus years later, Johnny hasn't been on there. The late night hosts still talk about him. Carson still makes headlines. Whenever they do those polls, greatest late night host of all time, it's not even close. It's always Carson. It's a testament to how important he was as a host and as just an American historical figure. And I'm very happy that I was able to capture this in book.
Well, Mark, again, congratulations. Thank you so much
sir.
Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
We thank you and appreciate you dropping in for the Paul Leslie Hour today. You know, you can help the Paul Leslie Hour in our mission to provide independent media content like this by visiting www.thepaulleslie.com/support. We truly thank you. This is your announcer speaking. Performance of The Entertainer intro song and Corina Corina outro song, courtesy of John Primorano. Well, that's it for today. So until next time, be safe and be good.